Imagine you're at the park, enjoying a peaceful afternoon, when suddenly, a man grabs a tiny puppy and takes off running. But here's what he doesn't know. Someone's watching, and not just anyone. A highly trained K9 police officer with instincts sharper than a blade. What happens next? Well, let's just say this thief picked the wrong day to steal. Dogs are more than just pets. They're family, protectors, and in some cases, heroes. But today's story isn't about an ordinary dog. It's about a K9 unit that turned a simple day at the park into a high-stakes chase. And at the center of it all, a defenseless little puppy, stolen in broad daylight. You won't believe how this all unfolds, and by the end, you'll see just how powerful a dog's sense of duty can be. It was one of those perfect afternoons at Greenview Park, the kind where everything felt peaceful. The sun hung lazily in the sky, casting golden streaks across the soft grass. A gentle breeze rustled the trees, making the leaves dance in harmony. The air smelled fresh, like spring flowers, and the warmth of the earth after a morning dew. Children's laughter rang through the park. Parents sat on benches, chatting away, keeping a relaxed but watchful eye on their kids. Joggers moved along the paved path, some with headphones in, lost in their own world. Dog owners strolled with their furry companions, tossing balls and frisbees as tails wagged in excitement. And right in the middle of it all, Lily and Max. Lily, just 8 years old, had begged her parents for a puppy for as long as she could remember. And finally, a month ago, her dream had come true. Max was the fluffiest little golden retriever puppy, with oversized paws, bright, trusting eyes, and a tail that never seemed to stop wagging. He was small, so small that Lily could pick him up with ease. But what he lacked in size, he made up for in energy. He bounced around, chasing after every leaf that blew past him, tumbling over his own paws as he ran. Max, go get it. Lily giggled as she tossed a small red ball across the grass. The tiny retriever yipped excitedly, sprinting after it. His fur gleamed in the sunlight as he pounced on the ball, struggling for a second to fit it in his mouth, before proudly trotting back to Lily, his tail swaying like a fluffy flag. She knelt down, scratching behind his ears. "You're the best puppy ever," she whispered. Max licked her nose in response, making her giggle even more. But what Lily didn't know, what no one had noticed, was that someone was watching them. Across the field, near the playground, a man stood by himself. He wasn't jogging. He wasn't with his family. He wasn't playing with a dog. He was just standing there. His hands were shoved deep into the pockets of his gray hoodie, the fabric slightly oversized, draping over his frame like a shield. His jeans were torn at the knees, not in a fashionable way, but in a way that suggested they'd seen better days. His face was shadowed by the hood, and his eyes, shifty, restless, calculating, darted across the park, scanning everything, analyzing. But most importantly, they kept landing on Max. At first, he blended in with the usual parkgoers. No one paid much attention to him, but if you looked closely, if you really focused, you'd see the signs. He wasn't just standing there to enjoy the weather. He wasn't just casually looking around. He was watching, waiting, calculating. His fingers twitched inside his pockets. His weight shifted from one foot to another. He licked his lips, and then he took a step forward, slowly, carefully, not toward the swings, not toward the jogging path, toward Lily. Or more specifically, toward Max. Not too far from the playground, sitting on a wooden bench, Officer Daniels adjusted the brim of his cap and exhaled. It had been a long shift. Daniels wasn't just any cop. He was a K9 officer, one of the most respected in the force. And beside him, sitting perfectly still, ears perked, eyes scanning the park, was his partner, Rex. Rex wasn't an ordinary dog. He was a fully trained K9 German Shepherd, with years of experience in tracking, search and rescue, and criminal apprehension. He wasn't just Daniel's partner. He was his protector, his second set of eyes, his most trusted companion. And right now, something was off. Daniels noticed it first in the way Rex stiffened. One moment, the dog had been watching the park like usual, scanning for any signs of trouble. But then something changed. His ears shot forward, his body tensed, and his breathing slowed. Daniels followed his gaze. At first, everything seemed normal. Kids played, people laughed, joggers jogged. But then he saw the man, the gray hoodie, the ripped jeans, the way he moved, not with the casual air of someone enjoying a park, but with the calculated stillness of a predator. And then, Daniel's stomach tightened. The man was watching the little girl's puppy, back near the playground. Lily had no idea what was happening. She was still laughing, still tossing the ball, still believing she was in the safest place in the world. Then it happened. The moment was so fast, so perfectly timed, it felt almost rehearsed. Lily turned for just a second, just long enough to wave at her mother, who was sitting at a picnic table a few feet away. That was all it took. The man moved, like a shadow slipping through the cracks. He was there 1 second and gone the next. One swift motion, one stolen puppy, one terrible mistake, because Max let out a frightened yelp, and in that one single, high-pitched sound, everything changed. Lily spun around, her heart slamming against her ribs. Max! Her voice cracked with panic. Her hands were suddenly empty. The ball rolled away in the grass. But Max was gone. She caught a glimpse, just a flash of movement, a man running, the gray hoodie, the ripped jeans, the way he clutched something small, golden, struggling in his arms. And then the scream. It tore through her throat before she even realized she was screaming. Raw, fearful, desperate. MOM. Someone took Max. The world blurred. People turned. Confusion rippled through the park. Somewhere in the distance, someone gasped. Someone shouted. A jogger slowed, looking around in confusion. But the man kept running. Faster, faster, toward the park exit. Max was whimpering, thrashing, his tiny paws kicking. And then a new sound. A low, deep growl. Not from a normal dog, not from a pet, from a K-9 officer who had just locked onto his target. Rex stood up. His entire body was tense, his muscles like coiled steel beneath his fur. His ears were forward, his eyes were locked, his breathing was slow, controlled. But Daniels didn't even need to give the order. Rex already knew what to do. Daniels unclipped the leash. Go! And in a blur of motion, Rex launched forward. The chase was on. The world around Lily blurred. Her chest felt tight, her heartbeat roaring in her ears. It was like the ground beneath her had crumbled. One moment, she had been playing with her best friend, her tiny, golden ball of joy. And the next, he was gone. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away, gasping for air as she spun wildly in place, searching, hoping, praying she had just imagined it. Max, her voice cracked. Max, her small hands clenched into fists. She turned in every direction, but there was nothing. No fluffy tail, no excited barks, nothing. Just strangers, frozen in confusion, some of them looking toward her, but none moving. And then she saw him, a shadow disappearing around the bend, the man in the gray hoodie. Lily's eyes locked onto the way his arms clutched something tight, something wriggling. And she knew, she just knew. Her tiny body jolted forward, but her legs failed her. She tripped over her own feet, stumbling. MOM. Someone took Max. Gasps rippled through the park. People turned, confused. Some whispered, others froze. But in that split second, while most were still trying to process what had just happened, one set of eyes had already locked onto the threat. A low rumble rolled through the air. Rex lifted his head. Officer Daniels was already on high alert, but the moment he felt a sudden shift in his partner's body, he knew. Rex had been calm a second ago, lying by his feet, relaxed but observant. But now he was stone still. His ears stood straight. His breathing slowed. His pupils shrunk into laser-focused slits. Daniels followed his partner's gaze, and then he saw it. The chaos, the panic, the small girl sobbing, clutching her chest, her legs shaking beneath her, and in the distance, a man running. Daniels' training kicked in immediately. His brain processed everything in a millisecond. The girl's distress, the direction of the running man, the bystanders looking in shock. This wasn't just a lost dog. This was a crime. His jaw tightened. His pulse quickened. He reached for his radio, but Rex was already locked in. Daniels barely had time to unclasp the leash. Find him, boy. That was all Rex needed. Like a coiled spring snapping free, Rex launched forward, muscles rippling, paws hammering the ground, air slicing past his ears. He didn't bark. He didn't snarl. He didn't need to. This wasn't a warning. This wasn't intimidation. This was a hunt. Rex's nose twitched, locking onto the scent. His brain processed it faster than any human ever could. Fear, sweat, the stench of adrenaline pouring off the thief's skin, and the tiny, desperate scent of puppy fur. Rex charged forward like a bullet. The thief had no idea. He had made it past the park's entrance, his breath coming out in ragged gasps. He gripped Max tighter, ignoring the way the little dog squirmed. He was almost out, just a few more blocks, and he could disappear. Or so he thought, because behind him, death was coming on 4 legs. The man didn't realize he was being hunted. Not at first. Not until he heard it, the sound of paws pounding the pavement. At first, he thought it was just another dog in the park, just some pet chasing a frisbee. But then it got louder, closer, faster. His chest heaved. He turned his head just slightly, and that's when he saw it. The enormous German shepherd barreling straight toward him, eyes locked, mouth slightly open, revealing sharp teeth underneath. A trained police K9. His heart seized. No, 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 he gasped, trying to pick up speed. Too late. The thief turned sharply, cutting through an alleyway, nearly slamming into a stack of garbage cans. His lungs screamed for air, but he didn't stop. If he could just find a place to hide, if he could just disappear. But Rex was already at the alley entrance. His paws skidded against the pavement as he pivoted, perfectly trained, adjusting to the sudden turn. His nostrils flared. His body remained low, coiled like a spring. He knew exactly how this would end. The man slammed his back against a brick wall, chest rising and falling in uneven gasps. His fingers trembled. His head whipped around, looking for an escape. There was none. And then he heard it. A sound so deep, so guttural, it sent a cold spike down his spine. A growl. Slow, low, deadly. He turned his head, and there, standing at the entrance, blocking his only way out, was Rex. For a split second, no one moved. The thief pressed himself harder against the wall, eyes darting, breathing erratic. Max let out a tiny, scared whimper, and that was the final mistake, because the moment Max cried out, Rex attacked. With the speed of a striking cobra, the German shepherd lunged forward. The thief barely had time to throw his arms up before wham. Rex's weight slammed into him. The force of 90 pounds of trained muscle sent him crashing to the ground. He screamed, writhing, trying to scramble away, but Rex was already on him, teeth bared, eyes burning, front paws pressing down, pinning his chest. The thief gasped, eyes wide with terror. No, no, get off me. Help, he shrieked. But no one was coming to help him. Instead, Officer Daniels appeared. Daniels approached slowly, hand on his radio, calm but firm. Stay down, he ordered. The thief whimpered, barely able to nod. His entire body trembled beneath Rex's weight. Daniels knelt beside them, pulled out his handcuffs, and without hesitation, clicked them around the man's wrists. Looks like you made a bad call today, Daniels muttered, tightening the cuffs. He glanced at Rex, who hadn't moved, his eyes still locked onto the thief. His chest rose and fell in slow, controlled breaths, but his body remained tense, ready to strike again. Daniels reached out, patting his partner's head. Good boy, Rex. Only then did the dog ease back, lifting his paws from the man's chest. Daniels stood, adjusting his radio. Dispatch. I need a unit at my location. Suspect in custody. Then he turned toward the shaking, golden-furred puppy who had backed himself into the alley wall, wide-eyed, frightened. Daniels crouched, softening his voice. Hey, little guy, you're okay now. Max hesitated, his small body still trembling. But the second Daniels extended his hand, the tiny retriever rushed forward, burying his face against him. Daniels smiled. Let's get you home. Lily stood frozen, her tiny fingers gripping her mother's hand like a lifeline. Her whole world had collapsed in the span of mere seconds. Her best friend, her tiny, golden ball of warmth, was gone. The park, once filled with laughter and sunshine, now felt like a void. The voices around her faded into an incomprehensible blur. The cheerful colors of the playground seemed dull. Everything had lost meaning. Tears blurred her vision. She hiccuped, trying to catch her breath, but panic clutched her chest like a fist. I should have held onto him, she choked. I should have been paying attention. Her mother knelt, squeezing her shoulders gently. Sweetheart, it's not your fault. Lily shook her head violently. How could it not be? What if she never saw Max again? The thought sent a fresh wave of tears rolling down her cheeks. And then, somewhere in the distance, a bark, a sharp, familiar bark. Lily's breath hitched. Her heart stopped. She knew that bark. She would recognize it anywhere. Her head snapped toward the sound, eyes wide, body trembling from head to toe. She searched the park entrance, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. And then she saw them. Officer Daniels, Rex, and in his arms, Max. Lily's brain barely had time to process what she was seeing. Max, safe. Her whole body reacted before her mind could catch up. A choked, disbelieving sob burst from her lips. Max, and she ran. Her legs burned, her lungs screamed for air, but she didn't care. Nothing else mattered. The world blurred around her, people parting to make way, gasps and murmurs rising through the crowd. She could see Max's tiny tail wagging furiously. She could hear his excited, frantic whimpers. And then, she collided into Officer Daniels, or rather into Max. Daniels barely had time to steady himself before Max leaped out of his arms, straight into Lily's. Lily collapsed to her knees, clutching him tightly, burying her face into his soft fur. Her entire body shook. Tears soaked into Max's golden coat as he wiggled in her arms, licking her face, covering her cheeks with warm, slobbery kisses. It was like he couldn't believe it either, like he was just as desperate to be back with her. Lily squeezed him tighter, afraid that if she let go, even for a second, he might disappear again. "Max, oh Max," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. I thought I lost you forever." Max let out a tiny whimper and nestled deeper into her arms. She never wanted to let go. The entire park seemed to exhale all at once. For minutes, there had been nothing but worry, fear, and uncertainty hanging over them, like a storm cloud. But now there was relief. Cheers erupted, strangers clapped, some even wiped their own eyes. Parents, children, and onlookers alike all celebrated the reunion, as if they had been holding their breath along with Lily. Lily, still holding Max close, felt warm hands on her shoulders. Her mother knelt beside her, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured, running a gentle hand through Lily's hair. "You got him back." Lily nodded, sniffling hard. "I thought he was gone forever," she admitted, her voice small. Her mother smiled softly, wiping a tear from Lily's cheek. "So did I." Then, they both turned their gazes to Officer Daniels. Officer Daniels stood tall, but there was a warmth in his expression. He wasn't just a cop doing his job. He had felt the urgency. He had understood the loss. And most importantly, he had acted. Lily looked up at him, her lip trembling. You got him back," she whispered. "You really got him back." Daniels smiled. "I didn't." Lily frowned in confusion. Daniels nodded toward the massive German shepherd, sitting proudly beside him. "He did." Lily followed his gaze and met Rex's eyes. For the first time, she truly took in the powerful, majestic dog before her. His ears were perked, his eyes calm yet sharp. He sat tall, his muscular frame radiating strength and confidence. But something about him wasn't just powerful, it was kind. He had saved Max. He had saved her world. Lily swallowed hard, her throat tight with emotion. She carefully shifted Max to one arm, hesitating for only a moment, before reaching out and wrapping her small arms around Rex's thick neck. The K9 barely flinched. Instead, after a brief pause, his tail gave a soft thump against the ground. He let her hug him, and then he licked her cheek. A quiet giggle bubbled past Lily's lips as she pulled away, wiping at her damp face. "Thank you," she whispered, meaning every single word. Rex huffed, as if saying, "You're welcome." Officer Daniels gave Rex a firm scratch behind the ears before turning back to Lily. "You know, not all heroes wear capes," he said with a small smirk. "Some of them just have 4 legs and a good nose." Lily beamed. She looked at Rex again, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I'll never forget this," she whispered. Daniels crouched down, his tone gentle. "You know, Lily, there's a reason dogs like Rex do what they do." She tilted her head, still holding Max close. "They don't just work for us," Daniels continued. "They protect us. They look out for the ones who need them." He gave Max a knowing glance. "Just like Max does for you." Lily blinked, suddenly realizing the truth in his words. Max wasn't just her pet, he was her protector, her best friend, and now, she had two. As the excitement settled, people slowly began to go back to their daily routines. But for Lily, everything had changed. She had gone from heartbreak to hope, from loss to reunion, and most importantly, she had witnessed a true act of heroism. As she and her mother prepared to leave, Lily hesitated. Then, she turned to Officer Daniels, eyes wide with a new kind of determination. "Can I see Rex again?" she asked shyly. Daniels chuckled. "I think he'd like that." Rex gave a soft woof, as if agreeing. Lily grinned, hugging Max close, and as they walked away, she glanced back one last time. Officer Daniels, Rex, 2 protectors, 2 heroes, and in her heart, she knew this wasn't just the end of a scary day. It was the beginning of something much, much greater. The crowd at the park gradually began to disperse, but the impact of what had just happened would not be forgotten anytime soon. Officer Daniels had just finished placing the thief into the back of his patrol car, securing the cuffs around his wrists before shutting the door. The man who had tried to steal Max wasn't just a random troublemaker. He had a long history of petty crimes. But today, he had picked the wrong victim, and he had been caught by the right dog. As the sirens of another approaching police vehicle echoed in the background, Lily, still cradling Max in her arms, turned to watch Officer Daniels one last time. Her chest still ached from the panic she had felt earlier, but now, that fear had been replaced with something else. Relief, gratitude, and most of all, a deep admiration for the 4-legged officer who had saved the day. Rex stood beside his handler, his powerful frame calm but alert. His job wasn't done until Officer Daniels said it was. Lily swallowed hard, her tiny hands tightening around Max's soft fur. Her heart ached in a different way now, not from fear, but from an overwhelming sense of appreciation. She had always loved dogs, but today, she had seen what they were truly capable of. She had witnessed bravery, she had witnessed loyalty, she had witnessed a bond so unbreakable that it could overcome even the worst of situations. Lily's mother gently nudged her forward. "Go on, sweetheart." Lily hesitated only for a moment before stepping forward. Rex turned his head toward her, his sharp brown eyes locking onto hers. He didn't move. He didn't wag his tail. He simply watched, assessed, and then, ever so slightly, his ears relaxed. Lily took a deep breath and reached out, her small hand shaking slightly as she touched the thick fur on his neck. Rex didn't pull away. If anything, he leaned in. A small, warm giggle bubbled past Lily's lips. "Thank you, Rex," she whispered, stroking the fur behind his ears. "You saved Max. You saved me." For the first time that day, Rex's tail gave a soft thump against the pavement, and in that moment Lily understood. He hadn't just done his job, he had chosen to help, and she would never, ever forget that. Officer Daniels smiled as he watched the interaction unfold. He had seen this happen before. It was a silent understanding, a connection that didn't require words, because dogs, especially those trained like Rex, knew things that humans didn't. They could sense fear, they could sense danger, but more importantly, they could sense who needed them the most. And today, Rex had known, without a doubt, that Lily had needed him. Daniels crouched down beside his partner, giving him a well-deserved scratch behind the ears. "Good boy," he murmured. Rex huffed softly, satisfied but still composed. He was trained never to break character while on duty, but deep down, Daniels knew that Rex felt the appreciation, and that was all that mattered. As the second police car drove away, taking the thief into custody, the weight of the entire situation began to settle in. People had always called dogs man's best friend, but today, Rex had proved that dogs weren't just friends. They were protectors, guardians, family. Lily hugged Max tighter, her heart still racing from everything that had happened. She had almost lost him, and if it hadn't been for Rex, she didn't even want to think about that possibility. Her mother placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You okay, sweetheart?" Lily took a deep breath and nodded. "I am now." She looked up at Officer Daniels. "Once more, will I ever see Rex again?" Daniels chuckled, resting a hand on his partner's head. "You know, I think he'd like that." Rex let out a small huff, his version of agreement. Lily beamed as she and her mother began walking back home. Lily couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. Max, now fully calm, was curled up in her arms, his tiny body relaxed and safe. But in the back of her mind, she kept replaying the image of Rex, the way he had chased the thief without hesitation, the way he had cornered him in that alley, the way he had stood guard, protecting Max until Officer Daniels arrived. It was something out of a storybook, something she had never expected to witness in real life. But it had happened, and now she understood. She had always loved dogs, but today, she had seen their true purpose. They weren't just pets, they were warriors, and some of them, like Rex, were born to protect. As they reached their front door, Lily looked down at Max, who was now sound asleep in her arms. She gently kissed the top of his head. "I'll never let anything happen to you again," she whispered. It was a promise, one she intended to keep, and though Max didn't understand her words, his tiny paw twitched against her arm, as if to say, "I know." Lily smiled, and as she stepped inside, she glanced up at the sky, as if offering one final silent thank you to the hero who had brought him back, to the dog who had saved the day, to Rex. This wasn't just a story about a stolen puppy. This wasn't just about a criminal getting caught. This was about something far greater. This was about the unbreakable bond between humans and dogs. Whether they're police officers like Rex, or tiny companions like Max, dogs will always be there, loyal, brave, ready to protect and serve. And that's why, no matter what happens, they will always be our heroes. If you enjoyed this story, remember, dogs aren't just pets, they're family. Cherish them, protect them, because if the time ever comes, they'll do the same for you. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories about the heroes we don't deserve, but are lucky to have.